She is next on my list. List? My list of girls I am going to mess around with. I stopped being friends with him. Story 1. I was driving with a friend, and he said, "Look at that great ass." As we drove past, it turned out to be a guy. He was embarrassed and angry and ready to fly off the handle if I said the wrong thing. So I said, "Don't be embarrassed. He did have a great ass." Story 2. A coworker at a grocery store I worked at in my teens said the following about the woman working in produce while we were walking through the produce department. "I'd eat the peanuts out of her poop just to smell her panties." I didn't know what to say then, and I still don't know what to say now. Story 3. Had a friend who would always say, "I would pee in her butthole," when he thought a girl was hot. Always struck me as a little weird, but hey, to each their own. Story 4. My friend told me when the overweight woman at Supercuts cuts his hair, he can barely control his erection. He said when her floppy arms smack against the side of his head, he nearly blacks out. Story 5. My grandparents met when my grandfather yelled from across the street, "I'd like to take a bite of that and catch lockjaw." They recently celebrated their 60th anniversary. Story 6. This happened when I was around 16 years old. I was on vacation with my parents in a distant country when a guy from the same country as me approached and pointed to a girl standing a few feet away. He said, "Do you see that girl? Doesn't she have a great figure? Looks really nice. I'd like to talk to her. She's really attractive." I turned to him and said, "That's my little sister." I'll never forget how pale he instantly became. He tried to make it up to me and apologized the whole time we were there. He did end up talking to my sister, though. Story 7. Had a friend in law school who was much older than the rest of us, in his mid-30s at the time. He described an attractive female classmate as follows: "I'd suck the farts from her asshole." He only asked her out later. 10 years later, they are married with kids. Story 8. My cousin and I were walking into a convenience store once. As we were walking in, this girl was walking out. He says to her, "Goddamn girl, after seeing you, I'm going to go touch myself in the car." She and I were both mortified. I looked at him and said, "Why did you just say that?" Awkward as hell. Still can't believe he said that. Story 9. Not a buddy but a coworker who had absolutely no idea of timing. I was looking at the backside of one of the cute waitresses and the person blurted quite loudly, "Oh, you were looking at her ass." Everyone in the kitchen paused for an instant. The waitress said she was flattered though. Story 10. My friend and I noticed this really pretty woman wearing a skirt and walking in bare feet. My buddy, drooling over her attractiveness, says, "Oh, I hope she steps in dog poop." Story 11. I once had a male coworker tell me, regarding a female coworker, I would wade through a mile of her excrement just to see where it came from. Took me a second to register. Story 12. I used to work with this Cuban guy. It was never anything he said. It was the way he looked at them. I mean, so creepy I would have to walk away out of sheer embarrassment. He was like a shark looking at a tuna fish sandwich. It was disturbing. Story 13. A friend of my wife's was getting married soon, and the husband-to-be invited me on the bachelor trip. A white guy, was hanging out in a jacuzzi, day drinking in Vegas with him and some of his buddies. We hit it off with some other people in the jacuzzi and started chatting. One couple was a white guy and a black girl. She was very attractive and really cool. Her boyfriend was really cool too. So no one in our group was trying to hit on her or anything like that. Then one of our guys, a Mexican guy, suddenly said, "So how long have you been into black women?" Everyone stopped and looked at him in disbelief. Story 14. At a place I used to work, we had a new start with a flowing curly mop of hair, and one of my colleagues turned to the other and said, "There is not enough shampoo in this town to get the residue out of her hair that I would put in it." Speechless. Story 15. I was working for my buddy's concrete business one summer. The crew rode to job sites from my buddy's house in an old short school bus. We stopped at a gas station. I was outside the bus chatting with my buddy while he pumped gas. Two college-age girls walked out of the store in our direction. They were about 10 feet away when I heard a window above me slide down. I looked up to see a guy on our crew stick his head out the window. This dude was rough. He grew up and still lived in our town's dilapidated trailer park. He was in his late 20s and looked like he was in his late 40s. He had a mohawk ponytail, a pockmarked face, and he was missing half his teeth. "Damn girls," he said. "I'd like to lick the both of you from your butthole to your belly button." Then he punctuated it with a big lick in the air accompanied by a slurping sound. Both their faces went from shock to disgust as they walked on. My buddy and I had to yell apologies to them over the cackling coming from inside the bus. Story 16. Had a friend who once said, "Oh man, I would do so many terrible things to her. They wouldn't even be able to identify the body." I know he was joking, but still. Story 17. While my two other coworkers that I share an office with and I were at each other's workstations, the young female intern came into the office. She started explaining how she got the project names mixed up and assured us it wouldn't happen again. Once she left, coworker 1, a guy who is married and a couple of years older than me, jokingly said she is perfect for me. I said no and explained why. Coworker 2, a man in his late 40s who is married, without hesitating after I explained, said, "She's got a nice figure." There was silence for a few seconds, and coworker 1 and I looked at each other and laughed hysterically. I basically said, "Never say that again." Story 18. I was stuck in the hospital over 1,000 miles from home while traveling for work after being diagnosed with pneumonia with sepsis. Despite my situation, it hadn't escaped me that many of the nurses who were taking care of me, by giving me my intravenous fluids, fixing my electrocardiogram monitor, checking up on me, were fairly attractive women around my age range. One of my coworkers came to visit me while I was there. Whereas I kept my thoughts about the nurses to myself, he very loudly and somewhat vulgarly commented on them while one of the nurses was right outside my room. I was released the next day and made a full recovery. Story 19. Hilariously inappropriate banter watching one very fine lady pushing a pram along with a baby. Collective jaw dropping from us. Smokin' hot. "There's one for you, mate. Think of the things you could do to her." Giggles. "Mum's nice too." Story 20. She will be attractive in a couple of years. So, essentially acknowledging a 13 to 15-year-old is attractive now, and will be legally attractive in a few years. We were 17 back then, and see how many guys have been with these girls since they've become legal. A friend's mom once said to me, "If only you were a couple of years older." I was 15 at the time, and she was just turning 30. I moved away, so I never got to find out whether she was waiting for me to become legal. Story 21. A few of my coworkers were checking out a mom walking into a store. The oldest one says something about the daughter too. I say, "She's a bit young for you." His response, "Old enough to pee, old enough for me." I haven't spoken to him since. Story 22. Okay, so my boyfriend, before we started dating, was talking to a friend of his about me, and he said, "Hey, she's got a damn nice pair of getaway sticks." In reference to my legs. I heard him, and 3 years later we're still dating. Story 23. A coworker I've been friends with for over a decade, who is gay, said he would lick the sweat and sock fuzz from between my toes after a long day at work. He is a twisted individual. I guess that is why we have been great friends for so long. Story 24. Some friends from work and I were discussing celebrity women and who we thought was more attractive than the others. One of them pointed out that he thought Ariana Grande was the most attractive out of the group of women we were talking about. He went on to talk about her petite frame, innocent look, and other things. After a moment, he said in the creepiest way, "And she looks really young." Keep in mind, the women we were talking about were all under 30. I'm never bringing my future kids, especially daughters, around that man, ever. Story 25. My friend once saw a pretty girl who was walking a dog and said, "That dog has a nice appearance." Edit. That friend was me. She was a nice white female husky with her tail up, showing me all her beautiful features. Story 26. We were at the grocery store checking out, and my buddy said, I would double bag her and throw her through the checkout line. Still bring it up to this day. Story 27. Was in a grocery store with my friend and his work colleague. We saw a woman in the store who was very attractive. When we were leaving, the work colleague said, She was so hot. I'd lick her anal prolapse. We never hung out with that man again. Story 28. Oh boy, here we go. I have a few good ones I've heard from a former chef of mine. Rest in peace. I would eat a mile of her mess just to see where it came from. I would breathe in her aroma and hold it in like a deep breath. She's got a shape like a sack of blocks, and I feel like building something. She's got a shape like a young boy. What? 5. Good thing I'm twice her age. She looks like she has unresolved issues. He was honestly such a great guy. Just loved saying shocking things for the surprise value. Hope you are joyfully enjoying yourself in the clouds, my friend. Story 29. I was in the United States Air Force and deployed to Kyrgyzstan in 2004. A variety of other countries had troops at the same base, including the Netherlands. One day I was hanging out with a female coworker and a group of Dutch Air Force officers. The female coworker is an open lesbian. A Dutch female airman walks by us, and everyone stares. She's the most beautiful girl on base, and everyone knows who she is. Tall, blonde, perfect body, and more. My lesbian friend starts talking about the blonde, how attractive she is, all the things she would like to do to her. Normally, when she talks like this, the guys laugh. This time, all the Dutch guys remain dead silent and serious. My lesbian friend realizes she said something wrong, so she just asks, "What?" The commander of the Dutch Air Force contingent on that base, one of the highest-ranking men on base, says, "That is my daughter." My friend turns white and starts to apologize profusely, saying how sorry she is. One of the things that American forces are reminded of routinely is that we represent the United States when working with Allied troops and that we must work hard to bring great credit to our country. Offending the commander of an Allied force would be a big problem for her. So, after about 20 seconds of her apologizing profusely, the commander starts to laugh and tells her not to worry about it. "I will warn her to stay away from you, though," he joked. So, close call for my friend. Story 30. Him. Damn, she's hot as fire. Me. Dude, she's like 15. Him. Well, if there's grass on the field, I'm interested. Me. Dude, you're like 30. That's disgusting and illegal. Him. Grass on the field makes it okay. Me facepalm, shaking my head. Story 31. Had a buddy say, "Dude, ever notice how hot some of these 14-year-old girls dress? Like they are ready to have sex. Sucks it's illegal. I am no longer friends with this person for this and other reasons." Story 32. We were at a supermarket and he was checking out the cashier, really creepily looking at her, saying he'd love to have sex with her and stuff. When it was our turn to go up, he saw her name was the same as his newborn daughter. He's been less creepy since. Story 33. I was out for coffee with my female friend and ran into a coworker. When my friend left for the restroom, my coworker asked if I was involved romantically with her. I told him she is my best friend and a lesbian. He shockingly commented he would be happy if he could be close to her. I sent a message to my friend to come up with an excuse so we could leave the awkward situation. My friend and I are so close that we can pick up on hints without knowing the details. She came out of the restroom and declared she needed to leave due to a personal issue. It was hard to keep a straight face, but the disturbing part was that I could tell my coworker was unervingly interested in her story. Story 34. I worked at a place a decade or more ago, and during the summer, I went to a local store with one of the managers to grab sodas for the rest of the employees, as it was hot in the shop. The man was in his early 50s, and as we walked past this girl who could not have been out of her teens, he turned to me and commented, "I could smell her scent from here, and it smelled sweet." I was in my early 20s and was pretty disturbed. Story 35. My friend and I were in Colorado to visit a girl I had a crush on. We were walking down the street, and a couple walked by us. The lady was good looking, so I said to my friend, "Look at the buns on that." My friend looked and said, "Yeah, he must work out." Story 36. It was a guy I'd worked with who was kind of off, like really off. Looked almost exactly like the Aurora movie shooter minus the Cheeto hair. He asked me for a ride to a doctor's appointment one day, which was weird because we weren't tight like that, but I'm a good guy and he didn't have a car, so I agreed. So, I drive him to his doctor's appointment, and the whole time he's telling me all about his violent psychological history and how his mom had him involuntarily committed and other weird stuff you don't just tell a stranger. Well, after his appointment, and I seriously considered just ditching him, but didn't really want him showing up at my house at 3 a.m. looking for payback, we stop at a gas station to grab a Gatorade before going to work. And as we're walking to the door, this beautiful young woman is walking out. I hold the door for her and let her pass, and he gives her a stare that could have peeled paint. And with her in earshot, he turns to me and says, "Like to catch her out after dark, huh?" My first response was literally, "What the heck? What was that, you dumbass? That's some sick stuff. You don't say that." I let the door close, walked to my truck, and drove to work without him. He tried to report me for making him late, and later reported me for warning women at work about him, calling it harassment, despite the fact he openly bragged about things like stalking his ex-girlfriend and wanting to and trying to murder his mom on the clock. I told a cop friend of mine the dude's name and information in case women ever started turning up missing. Still gives me the heebie-jeebies. Story 37. I know this thread is leaning towards funny gross worst and not like soul-crushing worst, but I'm constantly disappointed at how many of my male friends use terms like whore and slut in their descriptions of the women we're checking out. Like, damn bro, what did your mother do to you?